Let me tell you something that most people never realize until it's too late. Your entire life right now, your results, your relationships, your confidence, your income is nothing more than a reflection of the story you've been telling yourself. The scary part, that story might not even be true. You've been walking around carrying an identity that was built years ago, shaped by fear, by failure, by other people's opinions. But here's the breakthrough: the moment you shift that identity, the moment you decide to act as if you already are the person you want to be, everything changes. Think about it. Your brain doesn't care if something is real or imagined. When you picture yourself as strong, confident, disciplined, unstoppable, your nervous system begins to accept that reality. Your body responds differently, your energy shifts, and people around you feel it. Opportunities that used to pass you by suddenly start opening up because you're no longer showing up as the same old you. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but I don't feel confident yet. I don't have the money yet. I don't have the discipline yet. And that's exactly the problem. You're waiting for the results before you give yourself permission to feel the identity, but that's backwards. The truth is, you have to feel it first, embody it first, live it first, then the results come. So if you're tired of being stuck, tired of settling, tired of waking up with that quiet voice inside whispering that you're meant for more, then lean in right now. Because I'm going to share with you a simple but life-altering mindset trick that can collapse years of struggle into a moment of transformation. And once you understand this and start living it, your life will never look the same again. Your mind is the most powerful weapon you will ever possess. It is the control center of everything you feel, everything you believe, and everything you do. And here's what most people miss. Your mind believes what you repeatedly tell it. It doesn't care whether what you feed it is empowering or destructive, true or false. It simply accepts it. Think about that for a moment. If day after day you wake up and tell yourself you're not enough, that you're not smart enough, not disciplined enough, not confident enough, your brain doesn't challenge it. It takes that statement as a command, and then it begins to filter your reality to match it. That's why you keep getting the same results. Not because you're not capable, but because you've been programming your mind with limitations. Now, the opposite is just as true. If you begin to tell your mind a different story, if you start feeding it a new identity, respond with the same loyalty. If you act as if you are confident, your brain doesn't stop and say, wait a second, this doesn't add up, you're not really confident yet. No. It begins to look for ways to support that identity. Physiology changes, you stand taller, breathe deeper, project your voice with certainty. People respond to you differently, and suddenly the world starts mirroring back the very thing you decided to believe. This isn't magic, it's psychology, it's biology, it's how human beings are wired. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between what's vividly imagined and what's real. That's why athletes visualize before stepping on the field. That's why people can psych themselves into feeling fear or courage just by what they picture in their mind. And yet most people use this gift against themselves. They rehearse failure instead of success. They run mental movies of embarrassment, rejection, disappointment, and then they wonder why they never feel confident enough to take action. I want you to imagine for a moment that your mind is like a fertile garden. Whatever seeds you plant, that's what's going to grow. Plant weeds, weeds will thrive. Plant powerful, intentional seeds, and over time you create a garden of strength, clarity, and possibility. Acting as if is the act of planting new seeds deliberately. It's saying to yourself, I'm going to live today as if I already am the version of me that I want to become. And your mind, being obedient, begins to water that seed with focus and energy until it becomes real. Here's the problem. Most people wait for permission. They wait until they feel confident before they act confidently. They wait until they feel successful before they take bold moves. They wait until the world validates them before they show up as who they really are. But that's not how transformation works. Feelings don't come first. Identity comes first. When you act as if you're no longer waiting, you're claiming. You're stepping into the future you want to create and living from it right now. I'll give you an example. Years ago, there was a man who wanted to start his own business. But every time he thought about it, he froze with fear. He told himself, I don't know enough. I don't have the right connections. I'll probably fail. And guess what? He never took action. When he began to shift his self-talk and said, what if I acted today as if I were already a successful business owner? What would that version of me do differently? He stood taller, he made phone calls, he shook hands, he carried himself with energy. Within months, opportunities started finding him. Did he suddenly become a business genius overnight? No. But by acting as if, he convinced his mind and body to operate at a higher standard, and life began to align with that new standard. That same principle applies to every area of your life. If you're shy and want to be confident, stop waiting for confidence to magically appear. Act as if you are confident now. If you want to be healthy and strong, stop waiting until you feel motivated. Act as if you are already someone who respects their body and chooses wisely. If you want to be financially abundant, stop living from a mindset of scarcity. Act as if you are already capable of handling wealth with discipline and intelligence. This isn't pretending, it's practicing a new reality until it becomes true. And let me be clear, this isn't about lying to yourself. It's not about looking in the mirror and saying, I'm a millionaire, while your bills are piling up. That's delusion. Acting as if is about aligning your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors with the identity you want to embody. It's about asking yourself, if I already were that person, how would I carry myself? How would I think? How would I show up? Then doing it, not someday, but now. Because every time you do, you're carving new neural pathways in your brain. You're training your nervous system to accept a new normal. At first, it might feel uncomfortable. Your old identity will try to pull you back, whispering that it's not real, that you're faking it. But if you keep practicing, eventually the new identity becomes natural. That's how growth works. It's awkward at the beginning, powerful in the process, and effortless once it's embodied. Think back to when you first learned how to drive a car. At the beginning, every little action required thought. Adjusting the mirrors, checking the pedals, turning the wheel. It felt clunky and unnatural. But after enough repetition, it became second nature. You don't even think about it anymore. That's exactly what happens when you act as if. At first, it takes effort. You'll feel resistance. But over time, the behavior rewires your identity. And suddenly, you don't have to act as if. You simply are. The truth is, your life right now is a reflection of the identity you've been reinforcing, consciously or unconsciously. If you've been acting as if you're not worthy, not capable, not ready, you've been living out that story. The moment you decide to tell your mind something different and back it up with aligned action, everything changes. So let me ask you, what story have you been telling yourself? What identity have you been rehearsing? And more importantly, do you need to act as if you are starting today? Because the moment you choose it, the moment you step into it, your mind will follow. And when your mind follows, your life follows. The mind always believes what you repeatedly tell it. So the question is, what are you going to tell it from this moment forward? So let's go deeper into why this works. Most people think change comes from forcing themselves into action with sheer willpower. They believe discipline is about grinding harder, pushing longer, muscling through with effort until they break old habits. That's why so many people get stuck in the cycle of starting strong and then falling back. It's not because they're lazy or weak. It's because they're trying to change behavior without changing identity. And identity always wins. Think about it. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, who quits, who always falls short, you can try every productivity hack, every fitness plan, every strategy, but sooner or later you'll sabotage yourself. Why? Because deep down, identity doesn't match the behavior you're trying to force. Your actions are temporary, but your identity is permanent, at least until you decide to shift it. When you act as if, you're not just pushing yourself to behave differently for a short time, you're training your nervous system to adopt a new identity. And once identity shifts, behavior follows naturally. If you believe at the core that you are disciplined, you don't have to wake up every day and fight yourself to do the work. You simply act in alignment with who you already believe yourself to be. If you believe you're confident, you don't have to pump yourself up every time you walk into a room. You just show up that way because it's consistent with your self-image. Think about the difference between someone who says, I'm trying to quit smoking, versus someone who says, not a smoker. One of them is relying on willpower, fighting temptation, battling themselves every day. The other has shifted identity. And once identity changes, it doesn't feel like a battle anymore. It feels like the natural expression of who they are. That's the power of acting as if. You're stepping into the identity before the evidence is there. And by doing that, you create the evidence. Now, reason most people never break free is because they're addicted to their old identity. They cling to labels, to stories, to excuses that keep them safe. That's just the way I am. I've always been this way. I can't change. It's not in my nature. They'd rather be consistent with their limitations than risk stepping into an unknown version of themselves. But consistency with a disempowering identity keeps you trapped, acting as if cracks the prison open and gives you a way out. Here's the truth, you are always acting as if. Every day, whether you realize it or not, you're acting as if you are the identity you've decided to own. If you believe you're shy, you act as if you're shy. You avoid conversations. You shrink your presence. If you believe you're broke, you act as if you're broke. You hesitate to invest in yourself. You live in scarcity. If you believe you're a failure, you act as if you're a failure. You don't try, or when you do, you half commit so you can say, see, I knew it wouldn't work. The difference is most people are acting as if in a disempowering way. They're rehearsing an identity that limits them instead of one that frees them. So the shift is to become intentional. Instead of unconsciously reinforcing an old story, you consciously choose a new one. You decide, I am going to act as if I am the person who already has the confidence, the success, the discipline, the love, the freedom I desire. And the moment you live from that, your brain begins to accept it as truth. You start aligning behavior with identity. Your results begin to shift in ways that look almost effortless from the outside. Let me give you a real example. Imagine two people who both want to get in shape. The first person says, I need to lose weight. I need to force myself to go to the gym. Hate it, but I guess I have to. Their identity is still rooted in being out of shape. They're using willpower and every day feels like a fight. Now imagine the second person says, I am an athlete. I respect my body. I take care of my energy. Even if they're still overweight, even if they're just starting, they're acting as if they're already fit. They show up differently. They choose differently. And because identity drives behavior, or later their reality will catch up to the story they've decided to live from. That's why this principle is so life-changing. You don't need to wait years for your circumstances to shift before you allow yourself to adopt a new identity. You can decide in this moment to act as if you already are the person you're becoming. And the moment you make that decision, everything else begins to rearrange. Some of you might be thinking, but isn't that just pretending? No, pretending is lying to yourself. Acting as if is embodying the version of you that already exists in potential and bringing it into reality by choice. It's not fake, it's practice, it's rehearsal for the life you're committed to creating. With enough repetition, it stops being rehearsal and becomes reality. Here's something important to understand: your brain craves alignment. When you consistently act as if you are a certain type of person, your brain doesn't like the gap between what you're doing and who you believe you are. So it rewires your identity to close the gap. That's why behavior becomes automatic. That's why people who shift identity no longer feel like they're forcing change. It feels natural because now their subconscious is on board. And the opposite is true as well. If you keep trying to change your behavior while holding onto an old identity, your brain will sabotage you to realign with what it believes is true. That's why diets fail, resolutions fail, temporary bursts of motivation fade. The person never shifted identity. They just try to bully themselves into action for a while. But identity always pulls you back. So the real question is, who do you need to become? What identity do you need to step into? Are you willing to start acting as if right now? Not when it's convenient, not when it's proven, not when everyone else believes in you, but now. Because if you wait for evidence, you'll be waiting forever. The evidence comes after you decide, not before. Your life is the sum of the identities you've rehearsed. If you want a new life, you need a new identity, and the fastest way to create it is to act as if you already are that person. Because sooner or later, your actions will feel so real, your mind won't know the difference. Identity drives behavior, not willpower. So the question is, which identity are you going to live from today? Everything in life is energy. You've probably heard that before. I want you to really feel the truth of it. Every thought you think, every word you speak, every action you take carries a vibration, a frequency, a signal that not only shapes your internal state, but also sends ripples into the world around you. The incredible thing is that energy always follows intention. Wherever you direct your mind, your energy, your attention, life begins to organize itself around that focus. This is why acting as if is so powerful. You act as if you already are the person you want to become. You're not just tricking your brain. You're sending out an energetic command to your environment. You're saying to the universe, to the people around you, to the opportunities waiting to appear, this is who I am. This is the standard I live from. This is the frequency I operate at. And the world, being responsive, begins to reflect that energy right back to you. Think about it like a magnet. If your intention is small, hesitant, filled with doubt, your energy will match that. You'll repel opportunities because people can sense the uncertainty in your voice, in your posture, in your presence. But when your intention is bold, you carry yourself as if you already belong at the level you're aiming for, your energy expands. You become magnetic. You draw in the very circumstances, people and resources that match the standard you've chosen. You've experienced this before without even realizing it. Haven't you met someone who walked into a room and before they even spoke a word, you could feel their presence? They had certainty, they had clarity, and everyone paid attention. That wasn't luck. That was energy aligning with intention. They decided to own the room before they stepped into it, and because they carried themselves that way, everyone else responded accordingly. The truth is, most people are broadcasting weak signals. They go through life saying, I want more confidence, I want more success, I want more freedom, but their energy says otherwise. Their body language is small, their tone is uncertain, their habits reflect hesitation. And so they keep attracting people and circumstances that match that lower energy. Not because life is unfair, but because energy never lies. You can't say one thing and project another. World doesn't respond to your wishes. It responds to your energy. And this is where acting as if changes everything. When you choose to live from the energy of your desired future, you start to collapse the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Instead of waiting for confidence to arrive, you stand as if you already have it. Instead of waiting for wealth to show up, you carry yourself as someone who already values and attracts abundance. Instead of waiting for love to appear, you embody the openness, the joy, the radiance of someone who is already fulfilled. That shift in energy doesn't just change how you feel, it changes what you attract. Let's make this practical. Imagine you want to be more confident in your career. If your intention is, I hope one day I'll be noticed, your energy will reflect hesitation. You'll speak softly, avoid eye contact, downplay your ideas. And what happens? People overlook you. Not because your ideas aren't good, because your energy doesn't demand attention. Now imagine you act as if you already are the leader in that room. You speak with conviction, you sit up straight, you make eye contact. Even if your ideas are the same, people receive them differently because your energy validates them. Intention set the tone, and energy followed. Or think about relationships. If your intention is, I hope someone will love me, you give off energy of neediness, of insecurity. That energy pushes people away. But if you act as if you already are loved, already are worthy, already are complete, you radiate confidence, and people feel drawn to you without you having to force it. That's the power of intention. Your energy follows it, and people feel it. Some people will hear this and think, but isn't this just fake? No, because again, energy doesn't lie. If you're pretending, if you're putting on a mask without actually shifting your intention, people will feel the disconnect. But when you genuinely decide to act as if, when you align your mind, your body, your emotions with the identity you're stepping into, your energy becomes congruent, and congruence is irresistible. Energy following intention is why two people can be in the same situation and experience completely different results. One person says, I hope this works out, and their energy is timid. The other says, this will work out because I've decided it will, and their energy is certain. Guess which one gets the outcome they want? It's not luck, it's alignment. That's why I always tell people, stop asking, what do I need to do to get there? Start asking, who do I need to become and what intention do I need to carry right now? Because once you decide the intention, the energy shifts. And when the energy shifts, the actions flow. When the actions flow, the results show up. It's not about fighting your way there. It's about aligning your energy with the future you're creating. You've got to understand something. People don't just respond to your words. They respond to your energy. You can say all the right things, but if your energy is off, they won't believe you. On the other hand, you can say very little, but if your energy radiates certainty, people will follow you. That's the difference between leaders and followers. Leaders carry intention so strong that their energy pulls people in alignment with them. And here's the best part. You don't need to wait for anything outside of you to shift your energy. You can decide it in an instant. You can stand taller right now. You can breathe deeper right now. You can choose intention right now. The moment you do, your physiology changes, your state changes, and the way the world responds to you begins to change. That's how fast energy moves. So if you're waiting for your life to line up before you feel powerful, you're missing the point. You don't wait for energy to show up. You create it by setting intention. You don't wait to feel confident. You decide to embody confidence, and your energy follows. You don't wait to be successful. You choose to act as if you already are, and the energy you project brings success into your orbit. Energy is contagious. You shift yours. You elevate the people around you. You give them permission to rise to their higher self. You don't even need to convince them. Your energy does the work. And when you live this way consistently, life begins to look radically different, not because the outside world suddenly became easier, but because your inside world started projecting a frequency that attracted better opportunities, better people, better outcomes. Energy follows intention. The moment you decide to live with a powerful intention, the energy that flows through you will not only change your life, it will change every life you touch. Most people live their entire lives waiting to feel ready. They wait until they feel confident, till they feel certain, until they feel motivated before they finally take action. And because they're waiting, years go by, opportunities slip away, doors close, and they tell themselves, I'll do it someday. But let me tell you something. Someday is not a day of the week. Someday doesn't exist. And if you're waiting for emotion to show up before you act, you'll never create the life you're capable of living. The truth is, emotion doesn't come first. Action does. When you act as if you put yourself in the state of already being who you want to become, you generate the emotion you've been waiting for. Confidence is not something you get and then go out into the world. It's something you build by stepping into the world before you feel it. Momentum doesn't appear out of nowhere. It comes because you move, and once you move, energy begins to build. Think about it. How many times have you not wanted to go to the gym, not wanted to have that conversation, not wanted to work on that project, and then the moment you started, everything changed. At first, you had zero motivation. But once you stepped in, so you took that first step, suddenly you felt alive. Suddenly your energy picked up. Suddenly you remembered why it mattered. That wasn't motivation that came to you. That was momentum you created. And this is the secret. You don't wait for emotion to give you momentum. You create emotion by generating momentum, by acting as if, by stepping into the identity before the feeling shows up. This is how you break through fear, procrastination, and self-doubt. You don't think your way into a new life. You move your way into it. Now, here's where it gets powerful. Every emotion you've ever wanted, confidence, joy, certainty, power, gratitude, is available to you right now. You don't need to wait for the perfect circumstances to feel them. You can generate them by choosing the meaning you give to the moment and by shifting how you use your body. Stand tall, breathe deeply, move with energy, speak with conviction. Suddenly the emotion you were waiting for is there. You didn't wait for it. You created it. That's why acting as if works. Because when you embody the emotion of the person you want to be, your body, your mind, and your world begin to align with it. You can't feel weak while standing like a champion. You can't feel hopeless while breathing with strength. You can't feel uncertain while speaking with certainty. The emotion follows the action. And once emotion shows up, momentum begins to take over. Momentum is powerful because it compounds. One small action leads to another, and suddenly you're in flow. Have you noticed how the hardest part of anything is just starting? Once you start, it gets easier. Once you create movement, it gets harder to stop. That's why the most successful people in the world don't wait until they feel motivated. They've trained themselves to move first, feel later. This is why I say emotion creates momentum. When you live from fear, when you live from hesitation, you generate momentum in the wrong direction. You spiral down into more fear, more hesitation, more excuses. But when you choose to embody confidence, gratitude, and certainty even before you feel like it, you create upward momentum. That momentum changes your trajectory completely. I remember speaking with a man who wanted to change his life, but told me he didn't feel ready. He didn't feel confident enough to start his business, didn't feel motivated enough to take care of his health, didn't feel worthy enough to pursue the relationship he wanted. He kept waiting for a lightning bolt of emotion to hit him. But here's what I told him: if you keep waiting for the feeling to come, you'll die waiting. Start moving, and the feeling will follow. He finally did. He started waking up earlier, exercising, making calls for his business, putting himself in situations that forced growth. Guess what? The emotion he'd been waiting for started showing up. Not because it came to him randomly, but because he generated it through movement. This is the choice you have every single day. Are you going to let your emotions dictate your actions? Are you going to let your actions generate your emotions? If you live by how you feel in the moment, you'll never get anywhere, because feelings are fickle. They change with the weather. If you commit to living as if you already are the person you want to be, your actions generate powerful emotions, and those emotions create unstoppable momentum. Let me give you an image to hold on to. Imagine a giant flywheel, massive steel wheel that takes incredible effort to start turning. At first, every push feels exhausting. The wheel barely moves. But you keep pushing and it begins to shift slowly at first, then with a little more ease. And then something incredible happens. Momentum takes over. What was once impossible to move now spins with force, and it becomes almost unstoppable. That's exactly how emotion and action work together. At first, it feels hard. At first, you don't feel like it. But when you commit to moving anyway, acting as if, you build momentum. And momentum is what makes success inevitable. This is why you can't afford to wait. If you're waiting to feel ready, you'll never act. You're waiting to feel motivated, you'll never start. If you're waiting for confidence to appear, you'll never step into the room. You must flip the order. You must act as if. You must move first and let the emotion catch up. Because once it does, the momentum will carry you further than you ever imagined. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "I don't feel like it," remember, these feelings are not the driver. You are the one who decides whether to move or not. And when you move, you act as if. When you embody the emotion of the person you're becoming, you create momentum that no excuse, no fear, no hesitation can stop. Emotion creates momentum, but only if you choose to generate it. So stop waiting, act as if. Move now. Because the moment you do, you ignite a force inside you that makes everything possible. So many people hear the idea of acting as if, and they think it means faking it. They think it's about pretending, about putting on a mask, about being something you're not. But that's not what this is about at all. It's not about lying to yourself or creating some fantasy you don't believe in. It's about small intentional shifts. Tiny changes in the way you think, the way you move, the way you speak, the way you show up, that begin to compound into massive transformation. Because the truth is, real change doesn't come from one big leap. It comes from thousands of small shifts made consistently. Most people underestimate the power of small. They think the big breakthroughs come from one giant event, one massive decision, one moment of lightning striking. The breakthroughs you see on the outside are built on countless little choices made behind the scenes. It's not the one speech, the one deal, one opportunity that changes your life. It's the small shifts in mindset and action that prepared you to handle that opportunity when it showed up. Acting as if is not about waiting for that big moment. It's about creating daily micro moments that align with the identity you want to embody. Let's make this real. If you want to be more confident, you don't wait until the day you're giving a presentation in front of thousands of people to practice confidence. You start today in small conversations, in the way you carry yourself when you walk into a room, the way you hold eye contact when you talk to someone. Each small shift builds on the last until, over time, confidence is no longer something you're chasing. It's something you live. If you want to be healthier, you don't wait until you've got the perfect fitness program, the perfect schedule, the perfect meal plan. You start today with one small shift. Drink more water. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Cut out one habit that drains your energy. Each small shift reinforces the identity of someone who respects and cares for their body. And eventually, those small shifts compound into big results. If you want to create wealth, you don't wait until you win the lottery, until you get the perfect job, until everything falls into place. You start with one small shift. Save a little, invest a little, learn a new skill, live as if you're someone who knows how to manage money with intelligence and respect. Those small shifts add up. When the bigger opportunities arrive, you're ready because you've already been practicing that identity. Here's the beautiful thing: when you commit to small shifts, they're manageable. They don't feel overwhelming. You don't need to change your entire life in a single day. You just need to take one step in alignment with your future self, and then another, and then another. Over time, those steps build momentum. The momentum creates transformation that looks huge from the outside, but feels natural on the inside because it happened progressively. The danger most people fall into is that they dismiss the small shifts. They say, "What's the point of this? It's too small to matter." They underestimate the compounding effect of micro actions. But that's like saying a single drop of water doesn't matter when you're trying to fill a bucket. One drop may not fill it, but keep adding drops, and eventually the bucket overflows. Transformation works the same way. Every small shift you make is a drop in the bucket of your new identity. And sooner or later, the overflow happens. It becomes undeniable, irreversible, unstoppable. I want you to imagine this. Imagine you're standing in front of a giant block of stone. At first glance, it looks impossible to move. But every day, you chip away at it just a little bit. Maybe some days you don't see much change. Maybe some days you wonder if it's even working. You keep at it small shift after small shift. And one day you step back and realize you've created a masterpiece. That's what happens when you commit to acting as if every single day. There's another layer to this. You make small shifts consistently, your brain begins to register those as proof. It's no longer just a thought, it becomes evidence. Every small action tells your brain, see, this is who I am now. And the more evidence you build, the stronger your identity becomes. That's why small shifts are so powerful. They stack up until your brain no longer questions the new identity. It accepts it as fact. So if you've ever told yourself, I can't change, it's too hard, it's too much. The truth is, you don't need to change everything at once. You just need to shift something today. One thought, one behavior, one choice, and then repeat it. That's how transformation works. Not through massive pressure, through consistent alignment. And here's what's even more powerful: small shifts don't just change your actions, they change the way people perceive you. The way you walk into a room, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, those small adjustments in energy get noticed. People respond differently. Opportunities start to open. You attract more of what matches your new standard. It might look subtle on the surface, but the ripple effect is enormous. I want you to think of someone you admire, someone you see as confident, successful, powerful. Do you really believe they got there overnight with one giant leap? No, they got there by making small shifts consistently. Day after day, they chose thoughts and behaviors that aligned with the person they wanted to become. And because they kept stacking those shifts, eventually they crossed a threshold where the outside world began to see what they had already decided inside. So when I say act as if, I'm not asking you to fake it, I'm asking you to practice. I'm asking you to train your nervous system, your body, your emotions, your behaviors, small daily shifts that align with the version of you you've decided to become. And here's the magic: over time, what once felt like effort starts to feel effortless. What once felt unnatural becomes second nature. You no longer have to remind yourself to act as if. You simply are. Because small shifts compound. And when they compound, they don't just create change, they create transformation that sticks. Transformation that doesn't vanish when motivation fades. Transformation that isn't reliant on willpower. Transformation that becomes your new normal because you've been rehearsing it every day in small ways. So don't underestimate the small shifts. Don't dismiss them as unimportant. Don't wait for the big breakthrough to prove you can change. Start now, shift one thing. Act as if in one area. And then keep stacking those shifts until the person you've been practicing to become is no longer just an idea. It's the life you're living. Small shifts create massive results. And the moment you begin stacking them, your future starts arriving faster than you ever imagined. The most powerful truth about acting as if is that it's not a temporary game you play. It's about rewiring your identity to match the life you're moving toward. And identity is everything. Every choice you make, every habit you keep, every dream you either chase or abandon, it all flows from the identity you've accepted as your own. If deep down you believe you're someone who always struggles, who always falls short, is destined for average, then you'll live your life making decisions that reinforce that belief. But the moment you decide to shift that identity, even before the results have shown up, the moment you decide, I'm going to live as if I'm already the version of myself I've always dreamed of becoming, that's when your life begins to transform. Because here's what most people don't realize: identity is not fixed. You weren't born with a label that says this is all you'll ever be. Somewhere along the way, you accepted certain stories about yourself. Maybe someone told you weren't smart enough, strong enough, disciplined enough. Maybe life handed you setbacks that convinced you'd never get ahead. Maybe you looked at where you came from, what you had, and you assumed that's all you could ever have. But none of that is truth. It's just conditioning. Conditioning can be broken. Conditioning can be rewritten. When you act as if, you're breaking the old conditioning and installing new wiring. You're no longer reacting to life from the perspective of who you've been. You're responding to life from the perspective of who you're becoming. That's a radical shift because it puts you back in control. Instead of waiting for evidence to show up before you give yourself permission to change, you create the evidence by embodying the new identity right now. And the crazy thing is, when you do that consistently, life begins to bend to match your new story. Think about it. If you act as if you're a leader, how do you speak? How do you stand? How do you make decisions? If you act as if you're financially free, how do you treat your money? How do you value your time? If you act as if you're loved and worthy, how do you show up in your relationships? Every time you act as if you're practicing the identity until eventually it stops being practice. It becomes who you are. But here's the catch: you've got to commit. You can't dip your toe in this and then retreat back into your old habits when it gets uncomfortable, because it will get uncomfortable. Anytime you step into a higher identity, your old patterns will resist. That little voice in your head will tell you, You kidding, you're not that person. You've failed before and you'll fail again. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can listen to that voice and stay trapped in your old identity. You can keep acting as if and prove that voice wrong. Every time you push through that resistance, you weaken the old identity and strengthen the new one. It's like building muscle. At first it feels hard, maybe even impossible. But the more you lift, the stronger you get. And eventually what was once heavy becomes easy. Identity works the same way. The more you act as if, the more natural it feels, until one day you wake up and realize you don't have to try anymore. You are that person. This is where it gets exciting. Once your identity shifts, your results have no choice but to follow, because results are just a reflection of who you are being consistently. If your identity is someone who is disciplined, focused, and committed, your actions will reflect that, and your results will eventually mirror those actions. If your identity is someone who is confident, driven, and resourceful, your actions will reflect that, and your results will eventually mirror those actions. This isn't wishful thinking, it's psychology. Your life will always rise or fall to the level of your identity. So the question becomes, who are you deciding to be? Not someday, not when you finally have the proof. Right now. Do you choose to become right now, today, in this moment? Because the decision you make here will shape every decision that follows. And if you make that decision with courage and commitment, you'll start to notice something extraordinary. It begins to line up in ways it never did before. Doors you didn't even know existed begin to open. People who can help you suddenly cross your path. Opportunities that seemed impossible start to become inevitable. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. That's life responding to your new identity. And let me tell you, nothing feels better than living in alignment with who you know you're meant to be. You stop waking up with that nagging voice telling you you're settling. You stop looking at other people's lives and wishing you had what they have. You stop doubting yourself every time you hit a setback. Because setbacks don't define you anymore. They're just part of the process of becoming. When your identity shifts, failure stops being something you fear. It becomes fuel, it becomes feedback. It becomes proof that you're in the arena, growing, expanding, moving toward the life you've claimed. None of this happens if you don't decide. None of this happens if you keep waiting for evidence before you commit. None of this happens if you let the old identity call the shots. Change starts with a decision to act as if, to embody the identity of the person you're becoming, to refuse to let the past dictate your future. And I promise you this, the moment you make that decision, the moment you commit to living as if the life you want is already yours, something shifts. You feel it in your body. You feel it in your body, you feel it in your energy, you feel it in the way people respond to you. And if you keep living in that decision, it will carry you through the resistance, through the setbacks, through the doubts, till one day the life you've been acting as if you already had is the life you're actually living. That's the power of identity. That's the power of acting as if. It's not about faking it. It's about becoming it. Once you truly decide to step into that new identity and live it every single day, everything changes, because identity shapes destiny. And the moment you shift your identity, your destiny begins to shift with it.